Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Franchise Euphoria. Josh Brown here. Today's episode is brought to you by Franchise 5. Why Franchise 5? I'm glad you asked. Growing your franchise in a slow, deliberate, and thoughtful manner is a smart way to grow. Franchise 5 helps you do this by expanding 5 locations at a time with a Zen-like focus on the geographic locations that make sense for your growth. To learn more about this, go to franchiseeuphoria.com/franchise5. That's the number 5. So franchiseeuphoria.com/franchise5. Now to today's episode. Today I have on Rick Day. Rick is an entrepreneur from San Diego, California. After getting out of the Navy in 1985, he put himself through college at San Diego State University and soon thereafter founded a telecom firm, which he grew over 17 years. After selling his company in 2009, Rick has invested and has an active management hand in a boat dealership, a finance brokerage company, and with 2 other partners, also owns 5 Phenix Salon Suite franchises. So on today's episode, Rick's going to focus most of the time talking about his experience with the Phenix Salon Suite franchise. But if you recognize the name Rick Day, it's probably because he was on my show, almost 4 years ago, November 2014, episode 111. If you haven't tuned into that episode, I highly recommend it. Rick is a systems guy. And on that episode, he talks about how he learned to implement great systems for a business and what that can do for an entrepreneur. Rick is a tremendous guy. He's a friend of mine. And I think you'll find through this interview that he's very level-headed, very smart, very strategic, and all of that plays such a big role in his franchise success. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy my interview with Rick Day. Hello, Rick. Welcome to Franchise Euphoria again. How you doing?
Hey, great, Josh. Great to be with you.
Yeah, for those listening, if you don't know, if you go way back in the archives, I mean, maybe 3-4 years ago, maybe even beyond that, I had Rick on the show early on, and he was a fantastic guest, and you'll have to go back and tune in to that episode as well. But, Rick, today we're going to talk about your experience as a franchisee of the Phenix Salon Suites franchise. And I'm particularly excited because you're a friend and I enjoy talking with you. And, but I also think it's interesting for the audience in that, you have this background of being an entrepreneur, and you still are an entrepreneur in terms of, running businesses and so forth. And you sold a business back in 2009. And now you've got 5 or 6 locations of the Phenix Salon Suites franchise as a franchisee. So I want to dive into all of that, sort of, how that's been for you, and get into the nitty gritty of the franchise system. But before we do that, tell everybody who didn't listen to the first episode a little bit more about your background outside of, where you grew up and so forth, so we get a sense for who you are.
Yeah. Okay. No problem. So, again, great to be back. I was raised sort of all over the country. My dad changed jobs a couple times and ultimately ended up in San Diego in the Navy. And when I got out of the Navy here in 85, I just looked around and said, this is a great city, so I'm going to stay here. And my first venture into entrepreneurialism really was to start an auto detailing business, to work my way through college. And that, people might, you're just washing cars or whatever, but it was really scary to sort of step out of that employee mentality into, okay, now I'm running my own business. And I did well with it and ultimately sold that. And then I was in commission sales, and about 2 or 3 years later, I ended up starting Daycom Systems, which was my telecom firm. That was around 92. And I grew that business over 17 years, ultimately sold it in early 2009 and right after the big downturn. But the company was stable and solid and performing well. So I think I get out of it at the right time. And then I just, as we were talking a little bit earlier before the show, I decided to sort of create a lifestyle for myself of being more available for my kids and investing in helping other people grow businesses. And sort of the design that I had in mind was to invest and be a part-time manager and work part-time in several businesses that kick off cash flow and build equity. And ultimately, if the business, happens to sell, then, get a piece of that too. So that's all come full circle and is now keeping me very busy these days. And the Phoenix franchises are part of that.
Well, and I can recall. I think initially, when you were first looking at them, you kind of, pinged me or text me regarding the Phenix Salon Suites, and obviously, it fits well within what you just said, sort of the lifestyle that you're trying to maintain in terms of with your entrepreneurial ventures. What is the Phenix Salon Suites franchise?
Well, it's a pretty cool concept. So the idea is that for somebody starting off as a salon professional, usually they're going to go to some sort of cosmetology school, hair school, something like that, and then they're going to get a job in one of these salons that you sort of envision, where you walk in and you've got 6 chairs down each wall, and everybody's in there chatting and talking and doing hair, or doing aesthetics, or doing nails, or whatever it happens to be. And then those people sometimes will get tired of the chair being rented out while they're on vacation, or they'll get tired of things going missing, or they'll get tired of having to share their revenue and their product sales with the owner of the salon. And Phenix Salon Suites was founded in Colorado Springs by a really nice couple, the Riveras. And the concept is that for that person that's been in business for a while, they've got a book of business, they just want to go to their own place and do hair, or do makeup, or do aesthetics, or do nails. And they don't want the drama. They want to be able to lock up at the end of the day. They don't want to share the revenue. So essentially, we're enabling those salon professionals to exit that semi-public salon and move into their own suite, where they go home at the end of the day and lock the door, and it's theirs, and they set their own hours, keep all their revenue, and we provide that place for them to work.
And so you, as a franchisee, right, you have 5 locations?
Yeah, we just signed a lease for a 6th. We want to get up to 10, and I've got 2 great partners in the deal. Each of us kind of brings our own set of skills and experience to the table, so it's worked well.
So what's your role in that?
Well, so I tend to be more finance, operations, raising capital, securing debt, taking care of the books and taxes and regulations and things like that. So yeah, the first guy's a real estate guy, and he really looks for the locations. He does the demographic research, negotiates with the landlords, and really gets us great deals. Then we have to build the place out. There's a lot of tenant improvement stuff that has to go into this, so I'll tend to manage the cash flow. I work with the construction company, I work with the landlord and with the bank. And then at the same time, our third partner is really, really good at sales. He actually worked with me back in the Daycom days. He was my director of software applications, but he gets busy leasing.
So do you know all three? Did you know the other gentleman as well?
No. I knew my leasing partner because he worked for me at Daycom, and then he introduced me to the real estate partner. So the 3 of us, get along great, and we have very sort of individual roles, and we work well together.
So because it's always been interesting to me, these kind of suite franchises, because the franchisor essentially is providing a name, a brand recognition. And I know that I think Phoenix Salon Suites, at one point they were on Undercover Boss or one of those shows.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. That was Gina Rivera, and she was on Undercover Boss. And so she does a lot out there. She has a number of events in Hollywood and helps, actors and actresses. And so she does a lot to really develop the brand.
But then you were talking about how you have, one of your partners, and you're involved with this in terms of the build out and the improvements and so forth. I'm assuming that Phoenix Salon, as the franchisor, has the typical layout or the model pretty well taken care of. Am I wrong on that in terms of the decor? So you go in as a franchisee, you find a location, you find a building, you buy it as the franchisee. It becomes Phoenix Salon Suites, and then you're essentially finishing out all these, at least a number of individual salon suites, for then folks who do salon type work can come in with their book of business, and they have more of a turnkey operation within your property. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So if you picture, going into a mall somewhere and getting 6 or 7 or 8,000 square feet and just ripping everything out of there all the way down to the cement floor and the bare walls, and it's just a big cavern. One of the first things we have to do is start trenching the floor, the cement floor, for drainage, because each one of these suites has to have hot and cold running water, a sink, a drain, because you're doing hair, you're doing makeup, you're doing whatever that salon professional is doing in there. They've got to have individual lighting controls. They've got to have individual thermostats that help them keep their suite to a comfortable degree. And so Phoenix Salon Suites has a great architect that can really make the most out of a space and make it interesting looking when you walk in. And then they've gone and negotiated with the paint companies and the fixtures companies and the furniture companies to say, okay, if you make this stuff to our specs, we're going to guide all of our franchisees to you. So that's a standard look and feel across the country at over 200 locations now.
Oh, that's wow! I didn't realize they had over 200. So, part of a lot of times in the franchise relationship, at the outset, there's inherent value, right? I mean, if you're buying into a system and the franchisor has the processes down, has some name brand recognition, has some other things that are going to be valuable to a franchisee. I'm curious, like for you, now you've got 5, you're going on your 6, you're looking to get 10. After the initial stages of getting everything set up, tell me some of the things that the franchisor is helping you with after you get going.
Well, it's so the setup is important. The franchisor, of course, we talked about the build out, we talked about the furniture, but then on an ongoing basis, Gina and her husband Jason do a lot for driving product. They have some products that salon professionals can sell, to add some value to
That's nice.
the Phoenix Salon Suites experience. Yep. They have an annual meeting for stylists, and they bring in famous stylists and famous people in entertainment every year in Vegas. So that's like a 3 or 4 day event, and they do a great job with that. And then I mentioned, Gina being on TV and being with, some of the Hollywood stars. And so they're getting out and getting the name brand out there and doing that marketing, which I think is, in fact, I've even heard her on the radio, listen to satellite radio news sometimes, and I've heard Gina speak up on there too. So to me, a franchisor has to really continue to, drive the brand and drive that awareness so that people prefer that over other competitive concepts.
Yeah, but and it's interesting because in this model, the actual people providing the salon services, they're still coming in under their own name, right? They're just in the Phenix Salon Suite building. Is that right?
That's exactly right. So on the front, it's interesting because we have I don't see too much walk-in business at these locations. Again, this is for established salon professionals, but when you walk in the front door, there's a nice waterfall, nice presentation. There's a directory on a live screen on the, in the lobby area. And then you just walk down this hallway and you see all types of salon professionals. Everything from, makeup, tattoos and permanent makeup to hair to some people specialize in men's hair. We have one in our Rancho Bernardo location where the lady just concentrates on doing men's haircuts, and she's got the thing set up a little bit like a sports bar. So it's all different types of concepts. They're allowed to decorate their suites however they want. And so it's really sticky in that way. Once a salon professional has moved from a semi-public salon and they've moved into our suites, and then they decorate, and then they tell all of their clients where they are, and the clients get used to that new location. Generally, those salon professionals don't want to leave.
Well, I like that there's also this, it sounds like this sort of branding marketing component for the tenants, even though, I mean, it sounds like, by bringing people to, these, by bringing in other, celebrities and giving them an opportunity to sell more product, whatever, they're helping, the tenants of these locations sell more, make more revenue, which makes a whole lot of sense. Frankly, I didn't even think about that as part of the concept.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. It's when you look around and for a salon professional to say, "Hey, Josh, when you want your next haircut, I've moved into a Phenix Salon Suites, so I've got my own suite in there, and you can come and see me, and here's the location." So it's becoming a nationally recognized brand for salon suites.
So talk to me about the process you went through in deciding on actually buying your first Phoenix Salon Suites. In other words, did you research other brands? Did you look at other opportunities, or did you have your mind, sort of set on this franchise from the get go?
It's a great question. So my partner that worked for me at Daycom called me and said, "Hey, I know you sold Daycom. You got a little bit of money to invest. You got good operations experience, and I'd really like for you to look at this salon suites concept with me." And I'm a $15 haircut, barber guy. So I just told him, I said, man, I don't know anything about the salon business, and I'm not sure that's, down my alley. And he goes, well, he says, let me tell you what we're doing. And then I began to realize, you're not really in the salon business yourself. You're in the real estate arbitrage business. And so it's basically leasing a big space, building it out, and then providing subleases to that space. Then my next question, after I initially rejected the idea and said just not for me, I began to look at it and I went, okay, I see. Okay, this is pretty cool. And I said, tell me why we need the franchise, because honestly, it's not that complicated a setup. And he goes, well, it's probably more complicated than you think. And so then he put me on the phone with the real estate guy, and he started talking about negotiating with the landlords and getting them to pick up part of the tenant improvements and the lengths of the leases and the increases and the CAM charges. And so there was a lot of expertise that he brought to the table. And then I was convinced, okay, these two guys and with myself being the third partner, I think we make a good team. So it was then that we decided to get into the first franchise. And they didn't tell me this at the time, but when we built Rancho Bernardo, which was our first one, it was the fifth largest in the nation. And they didn't tell me about that when we were first signing it up. And they told me about it later. And I went, holy smokes, I might have been much more scared had I known that.
How long? So it obviously sounds like it's going. Is it fair to say it's going pretty well? You're opening up your sixth location.
Yeah, absolutely. I think among the 5 locations that we have now, we've got about 190 or so suites that are leased out, and you've always got a little bit of turnover. People's lives change, they move, various reasons. But for the most part, we're full at all locations. I think we may have 2 or 3 vacancies across those 197 suites.
And then do you just have a management company or some sort of company that helps you manage, if a tenant decides to go or whatever the case may be, who goes out to find new tenants?
Well, that's a great question. So at each site, we have an on-site person who gets, a break on their rent. And for that, then they have to help us collect the rent from the other ones, which we do via check or electronically with, a mobile app. So you've got that on-site help there that makes sure that the bathrooms are clean and they're stocked and the vacuums run once a day down the hallways and stuff like that. And then we've just hired and are implementing sort of a regional manager who will handle higher level questions and issues. And when it comes to spending money, if the carpets need to be cleaned or if we need to call in somebody to repair some drywall. So we've got one person that manages our 5 sites for us.
Well, and that's smart. I was going to say, after you get to about 5 locations or more, you really need to do that. And some people know that ahead of time. Some people get forced into it after they just get bombarded with all the issues and questions and so forth that comes along with running, so many different locations.
No question about it. Just to kind of tag on to that, Josh, when we first opened, we knew that we could manage 1, 2, 3 locations just fine, amongst the 3 of us. But we also knew that once we got to 5 and then even bigger, that it was going to require a different management structure. So we've planned for it and are implementing that now.
So it's interesting. I know some other salon suite professionals, and it seems like whether by their leasing or whatever the arrangements they have is they'll pay weekly. It's sort of like a weekly. Is that how Phoenix Salon Suite says it, or do these professionals pay monthly?
No, you're absolutely right. It's a weekly deal. So, in fact, I had one friend of mine actually that criticized the model because he says, "Well, the problem is, Rick, you guys are signing, 10-year deals and long-term real estate contracts because we're leasing the spaces, and then he says you're putting a bunch of cash in, and then you're renting on a weekly basis." So you really don't have the stickiness with the salon professionals that you might like to have. But once I explained, what I talked about earlier about them moving, bringing their clients, decorating their suite, we find that we just don't have a lot of turnover, and all we have to do is keep the place working and keep it clean and nice and safe, and everybody's happy.
Yeah, and that's that. The other folks I know have the same exact experience. It's like you're going to have turnover. There's going to be a certain percentage, but it's also hard for those individual business owners if unless your business drops for some reason, it's not typically something that people want to change their address all that often. Unless they have to.
No, I think that's right, especially when they're relying on, I don't know, call it 50 clients that they see maybe monthly or however many number of clients that they have. And the other part about it, Josh, too, especially in this particular business, is that, if the economy does slow down, women still get their hair done. Women still take care of their skin. Well, they still get their nails done. So it's a very inelastic demand.
Yeah, it's recession proof. Sure. It really is.
Sure.
Tell me this, what's been the challenge for you or a challenge for you just in terms of, I know you're an entrepreneur at heart. Now you're in a franchise system. And one thing that I know is there are certain entrepreneurs that can make that switch and sway back and forth, and there are others who just can't do it. They just have to be the ones with the ideas. They have, they look at a franchise system and they go, yeah, I see that you're doing it this way, but I see 10 different ways that would be better. Tell me how that's been for you from a psychological perspective, and I'm curious what some of the challenges have been for you in that mind shift.
Well, first of all, I one of my favorite sayings in business is ignorance is bliss. And so I don't, I really didn't know anything about the salon business before I got into this. And I've learned quite a bit over the period of time that we've been doing it for 3 or so years. But I would say that I had some hesitation initially. Just because I'm an entrepreneur and I looked at this concept and I went, wait a minute, we could easily do this. Why do I need them? But they do have some really good templates. They've got all of the contracts that you need. They've got procedures. They've got checklists. They've got, daily, weekly, monthly, semi-annual, checklists and schedules of events. So
they're very hands-on.
Well, so it's interesting. I wouldn't call them hands-on. I mean, they don't come to the locations and bother us. If you want them to come, they will. But they're very, very thorough with all of their directions. And usually, if you have a question about what to do in a particular situation, there's an answer. They've been through it already, so they really are sharing their experience and their processes, and it's made that part of it very easy.
Well, I mean, that's fantastic. It's funny you said ignorance was bliss. I was at a store with my family this weekend, one of those life is good stores, and they had a sign on the wall that said, "If ignorance was bliss, why aren't there more happy people in this world?"
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's I say that primarily too about the boat business that I'm in, which is of course not the subject of this interview, but I got into it in 2009 at the bottom, right after the bottom fell out in 2008. And so I told them at that time, I said, ignorance is bliss. I don't remember what it used to be like. All I know is here's where we are today. We have to build from there.
And sometimes it's good to have a short memory too, right? As same kind of a thing. Well, so to that point though, that we were just talking about, I think one of the things, and correct me if I'm wrong, before you signed on the dotted line, before you bought into this franchise system, did you, there's always a discovery day and so forth, but I'm curious what other things you did to kind of familiarize yourself and your partners familiarize themselves with the brand, with the owners? I mean, did you get to know the founders a little bit before you dove in, or what sort of process did you go through?
No, I really didn't. I visited a couple of locations, and I just kind of went through, and I made note that they were nice spaces, that they were appointed well, they had nice decorations, nice lighting. Walked through, talked to some of the tenants. They were happy. They loved being in business for themselves. They felt safe and secure. And so I really liked the concept. And I just thought, we're on the edge of a kind of a cool concept here, to have these, salon suites. I mean, they've been doing office suites for a long time. I think they call them executive suites, where you can share a conference room, share a receptionist. So when I looked at this and I thought about it and I visited a couple locations, I just went, and I have an immense amount of trust and respect for my partners too. I said, okay, let's try one, see what happens.
Well, what I love about the process that you went through is that, you and your partners were smart enough that you realized at the outset that each one of you were going to bring something different to the table. I think there's a lot of people who fall into the trap in franchising of just going in, buying in themselves, not really taking the time to figure out what their involvement is going to be in the franchise. They're I don't know if it's that they're naive or they just don't think about it, but there's this perception out there that, you buy, it's sort of the business in the box. You buy it and it's just going to run itself. And we all know that's not true. You're going to get tools, you're going to get support, you're going to get branding, other important things from your franchisor, but you still have to go in there and run the business.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And you were asking earlier about, how did I feel after, having been an entrepreneur, then to basically, use somebody else's methods and systems. And, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, especially people that are working by themselves or they're the CEO of their company, there's a certain control issue that they feel like they have. And, I just never really got my ego that wrapped up with my businesses. I mean, I've enjoyed my businesses. I've worked with a lot of good people, set up some great management teams, and so I enjoy building a business that runs by itself. And some of the best ideas I've ever had, I stole from somebody else. You just don't have to solve every problem on your own, and you don't have to create every solution, from the ground up. Somebody out there has been there, done that.
Well, one of the things I've always been impressed with by you is that you seem to know your lane, right? You know what you're good at, you know where your role needs to be, and you find other people to plug in the areas around it,
Yeah.
it sounds really simple, but it's amazing how many people don't do that.
Yeah, I think, really being an entrepreneur, I mean, our whole goal here was to set these sites up so that they would run themselves essentially. And by hiring, now that we've got 5 sites, by hiring that regional manager, and with one of us partners focused on leasing the spaces and training the on-site managers how to give a tour and things like that, essentially only the really crazy stuff bubbles up to the top to the 3 of us as owners. So it's been a good experience, and for the most part it's automated. And then you can go in and shake hands and smile and visit and say hello and then report back to your manager what you heard.
Well, so if somebody wants to learn more about the Phenix Salon Suites franchise, number one, where should they go? And I don't know if you want to give out any contact information if there's anybody who's interested or at least wants to find out more about the concept, because I can tell you I'm getting more and more inquiries about these type of concepts, in large part because of what you just said, and that the idea is you set them up and they become, if you do them the right way and if you have the right team in place, they become relatively passive at a certain point in time.
I think that's right. Yeah. And, my role from the financial management standpoint is, I've got to do my royalty reports every month, and I check on the financials every month and make sure we've got adequate cash. And then, so there is monthly work, but, I'm not reporting someplace, 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. It's I get a big rush at the beginning of the month for probably the first week. And then, the rest of the rest of the month tends to be problem solving or social activities.
Yeah, no. So that's fantastic. And I think that has an interest for a lot of people. Now, obviously, I think we always got to say the caveat that anybody who says it's a truly passive investment is just not true when it comes to a franchise model, like you said. But that's what this is hitting on. This is hitting on finding, franchisees, like you, I think who have I'm not sure everybody has the same level of experience that you have, but who is in a position to really help get these things off the ground and then manage it on a day-to-day basis. So it looks like if people want to know more about the franchise, they can go to phenixsalonsuites.com. Is that the best place?
Yep, and it's just leave the O out. It was actually named after the founder's son, Phoenix. It's PHENIX, Salon Suites, plural, .com. And a ton of information on there. They've got a great team. The franchisor's got a great team, and like I said, help with the real estate, help with the operations. All of the questions that you might have about this thing is they've got a really good team of people that can help get you started.
Well, thanks so much for coming on, Rick, for a second time. I haven't had too many two-time guests, so that's good. I appreciate you coming on. I remember we sort of scheduled this after you had posted something about your next, soon-to-be location with Phenix Salon Suite. So I always love hearing a good story. I love hearing how things are going well with this particular franchise. I've obviously learned more about it over the years, in large part to some of the marketing and branding stuff that they've done. And like I said, I continue to get a lot of people who, there's a lot of people out there who are looking for these type of investments. So thanks for coming on and sharing a little bit about that.
Oh, well, you're absolutely welcome. I'm flattered you asked me back.
Thanks for being with us today on the Franchise Euphoria podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to go to iTunes and provide a review. Also, please remember that although Josh Brown is a licensed and practicing attorney, nothing contained in this podcast should be construed as legal advice, because it is not. The information contained in this podcast is general and educational in nature, and none of it should be relied upon as legal advice. That being said, if you have questions for Josh and would like to contact him, please email him at josh@franchiseeuphoria.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you tune in to our next weekly episode.